Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is Diversity House Black History Month event. We are celebrating the history of Black people, especially in the United Kingdom. My name is Christine Locke. I'm the CEO of Diversity House. Diversity House is a charity that was started in 2007 to address social inequalities. The main aim of the charity is to promote community integration, inclusion, and cohesion. And the way to actually proactively promote integration, reintegration, inclusion, and cohesion is for the people from diverse cultures to understand and appreciate each other's culture. So the delivery of Black history activities is one of those tools to achieve the aims of our charity, which is to promote cohesion. So tonight, I'm going to present a talk that is in two parts, actually. The title of the talk is So the title of this talk this evening is Kings, Queens, and African Kingdoms, Breaking the Myth. So the intention is to debunk some of the myths about Black people and the Black kingdoms. And before I start, I would want to say that we are recording this meeting this evening, and that we should all be mindful of what we say virtually, okay? So, Black kings, queens, and African kingdom, the myth, debunking or breaking the myth. So what are the myths that we're talking about? What are myths? Myths are stories that people make up. Often, they have some tinge of truth in them, and often they don't, most of the things that are said are not true. You know, they have a little bit atom of truth, but every other thing is that fallacies. So some of the myths that we hear about Africans or the African kingdom is that Africa is a dark continent. You get that a lot. I teach also in schools across the United Kingdom, primary schools and secondary schools. I remember during the celebration or the remembrance of World War I, the stories I heard about Africans in World War is that Africans were not, did not partake in fighting or contribute in any way in World War I. That was also a myth. So, and most people, most young people that I spoke to and I taught during the time in 2015 to 2018, talking about wars and especially how it affected Africans. Some of them actually didn't know anything about Africans. The teachers didn't know much about Africa. And what I had a child said to me when I was teaching about Africa and the contributions of Africa in World War I was that Africa was a dark continent, actually. So that's a myth. It's not true. Another myth that you hear is that Africa is an impoverished continent, very poor. All you hear, and when people say, oh, Africans are poor people, that's one of the things you hear. Nobody says any other thing about Africa. And I think it's the social media that also adds to the flavor that Africans are so poor that the most impoverished continent in the world. And I will have to disapprove of this. And I'll give evidence to show that it actually, it's contrary, what they say is contrary to the fact. Another thing, myth about Africa is that Africa is that savages an unruly continent. It's an unruly continent. They are made up of savages. The next myth is that African history commenced from the early contact with Europeans in 1500. And that's a lie. The African history has always been there. And African history cannot be contained in a month. The history of Africa is not what anybody can celebrate in 1 month. And our history did not start with the early contacts with the Europeans in the 1500s. And I will give evidence to show that these are all, hearsay and fallacies. So, now let's look at Africa. Where is Africa? Most people actually don't even know the location of Africa in the global map. They don't know it. If you ask them to pinpoint where Africa is, they will point somewhere else. The first thing we need to know about Africa is that Africa is a continent. Africa is a continent, and Africa actually is the second largest continent in the whole world. Aside from from Asia. Asia is the first and the largest continent, which is now followed by Africa. So Africa is the second largest continent in the whole world. And I hope everybody knows the different continents that we have. And if you could see the PowerPoint slide here, it shows you the different. Look at the position of Asia up top there, followed by Africa. Africa is the second largest continent in the whole globe. Let's look at the topography of Africa, actually. Now, I said that Africa is the second largest continent in the whole world. And we could prove this because if you let's look at China. Let's look at China from the position of Africa, as you could see in this PowerPoint presentation. The whole of, when you put the whole of China, as populous as China is, it will fit just a part of Africa. And Africa will be, still looking for more, continents to dump inside. We'll talk about United States within 55 states. And to be honest, the United States of America is, it's very large, but it will just take up parts of West Africa. Part of West Africa, look at the south, where Africa, Nigeria and all that, you slot United States there. It will cover places like Nigeria, Togo, Ivory Coast, and other parts of West Africa up there. Then you see Europe, Eastern Europe, will all fit in Africa. India itself will fit in. The whole of India will fit in Africa. The eastern horn of Africa. Then you look at Portugal, Spain, Netherlands, France, Germany. All will fit into Africa, and Africa will actually swallow it and consume these parts of the world that we say. Africa, the continent, the size of Africa, you have that Africa is 30,221,532 square kilometers. And in miles, it's 11,668 miles, 668,599 square miles. The only continent that is larger than Africa is Asia, like I said. I reiterate that one. And in the land mass, we occupy 12.7% of the whole global land mass. That makes Africa a very huge place. And the highest point in Africa is Mountain Kilimanjaro, Tanzania, which is about 19,341 feet or 5,895 meters high. So that's one thing about Africa, is how huge Africa is. Then, some facts of Africa that nobody talks about, and to be honest, some of us as Africans don't actually realize and understand some of these facts that we need to talk about this evening. The fact is that 50% of the world gold is situated in Africa. 50% of the world gold is there in Africa. 90% of the world's cobalt is found in Africa. Whilst 40% of the world's potential hydroelectric power is based in Africa. Begin to look at all the waters that we have in Africa. So 65% of manganese, millions of acres of untilled farmlands, as well as other natural resources. These are all found. We're talking about diamond. I hope some of you have watched the diamond, Blood Diamond, that film that is called Blood Diamond. You see the rush of people and expatriates rushing to Africa just to get diamond. That's some of the problem we have. Look at Sierra Leone and Liberia. Some of the mineral resources that led to young people actually being handed guns by mercenaries to fight, so that some of these mercenaries will get their hands into the mineral resources of those places that I mentioned, Sierra Leone and Liberia, which left some of the younger people in those zones not going to school because they were fighting wars. So Africa is very rich in crude oil, in coffee, then look at all the vegetables, the fruits that you have, all the tropical fruits that you have that are exported to Europe and to, look at United Kingdom. We talk about mango, we talk about carica, papaya, guava, we talk about many of the, fruits that comes into this place that are tropical fruits. Most of them come from Africa. We talk about banana, plantain, most of these things are from Africa. Look at palm oil and palm fruits that are used by industries to do like shea butter oil, the cream, moisturizing cream and medication. You talk about bitter colas that are used for medication. You talk about things like cotton that are used for garments. So many things, Industrial revolution, actually, let's go back to the time of the partitioning for Africa. What led the partitioning for Africa? In the partitioning for Africa by the Europeans, we are based upon the rush for resources and human resources and other resources, in order to feed into their industrial revolution. That's why all the Europeans were fighting, and they went to Berlin. They had a Berlin conference and sat around the table to carve Africa the way they carved Africa, because every European wanted to have a bit of Africa because of the resources that were there. And we still have these resources in Africa today. So that would debunk the myth that Africa is impoverished and the poorest of the poor continent. The contrary is actually what is there, that Africa is rich in resources, both human resources and mineral resources. Then, we talk about now, let's talk about Africa. Let's talk about the current state of Africa and what Africa has to give, and why there is still let me be honest with you. There is now the second colonization of Africa as we speak today. Why are we seeing Europeans rushing to Africa, even as we speak? It's because of what Africa gives out each year to the world. For instance, Africa, okay. Well, can we take a little while to say thank you to, okay, he's not joined yet. We have somebody joining us and we have to make him welcome. So he's joining. So I'll take a minute. Do you have any question to ask me? Do you have any question? Is there anything I need to clarify? No. Okay. So we're waiting for Tony to join us. Is Tony joining? Tony joining from the United Kingdom, I think. I hope so. Okay, yes, I did that. He's still trying to connect. So, as we are here, let's take a minute to look at this map. Can you see it? Yeah, let's have a look, because I will want you to actually ask me. I want people to ask me questions about this, because it will sound as if it's really true. Do we have Tony? Hello, do we have Tony with us? He's still connecting. So most participants to this will ask, is it true what this slide is saying? It's too good to be true, isn't it? That Africa gives more than it receives, which is the truth. What we receive here every day is like we are the people coming to eat from the table when we did not contribute anything. But the reality is this. Yes, we are giving some concessions. We are giving some aid, We receive aids, but let's look at the aids we receive. Africa received only $30 billion in overseas aid. But do you know what we give? That's the funny aspect, because people, make so much noise. The donors make so much noise that you will think that without their donation, that Africa will not survive. So they keep saying, all we hear is, we give aid to Africa, we give them water, we dig in wells for Africa, we give him money for education, we give him money to fight malaria, all sorts of things. And the donors, yes, because it's good for them to make so much noise. It's a feel good kind of feeling, it makes them feel so good. But the reality is quite different. The reality is that Africa receives only 30 billion in overseas aid. But what do we give out from our continent yearly? We give out approximately 192 billion each year to reach overseas countries. Why do you think everybody rushed to Africa? Why do you think that the Chinese, look, let's cite an example, for instance. The Chinese have colonized Nigeria, for instance. Why do you think? If they're not getting anything from there, why do you think they will go there? Why do you think they will bother to go there? Okay. Now let's break down. We said that Africa received $30 billion yearly in overseas aid, but they give 192 billion each year to our rich overseas countries. Then let's break it down to how it works. So 36.6 billion is as a result of climate change, okay? 6 billion in health workers migration compensating for skills gap. So you see, all of you that are here, look at the amount of money that you are saving wherever country you find yourself. Africans are scattered globally, and not just Africans, it's just Africans that go there to do unskilled labor. These are talents. These are very skilled people, professionals, doctors, scientists, all sorts of people that you find that are out there in the different countries. Then this resulting to, brain drain in Africa, the skills gap in Africa, because our skilled people are now overseas in the different foreign countries. And so the result is 6 billion in gaps, in skills gap, okay, which is given to other countries. Another thing you see is that 35.3 billion is, Africa lose 35.3 billion. How do we lose this? We lose it in tax evasion, because most of these foreign nationals and companies that come to colonize Africa do not pay tax. They don't. And so we lost 35.3 billion financially from people running away. They bring their companies to seek tax haven in Africa, and so they don't pay tax. Okay? We must welcome, let's welcome Tony. Tony, how are you? Could you unmute yourself, please? Hello, Tony. And I think I have somebody that is saying hello to you too. Is it this? What, say hello to Tony then?
Hi, Tony.
He's on mute.
Tony said hi.
He said hi. Okay. So let's continue with how Africa is giving $192 billion to overseas country, whilst it received only 30 billion from, as overseas aid. We've mentioned skills gap of 6 billion. We've mentioned, hello, Tony, how are you? Nice to see you. So unmute yourself so that you could ask some questions. So we have mentioned that these overseas countries that bring their companies to Africa actually see Africa as a tax haven. So we lose 35.3 billion in tax evasion from these countries. Then 17 billion illegal logging. So they do logging, you know what I mean by logging, yeah? Timber, wood, and all that, they log and they take it away, and we lose. Deforestation in Africa is a lot. Then, what else do we lose? 46.3 billion. That this country, they make, they do not pay us. We lost 55.3 billion in tax as they go to tax haven. But they take away 46.3 billion in the profits that they make. They companies. We want to begin to talk about the multinational. Let's look at Nigeria, for instance. We have I think you want him to join us. You look at people like Cadbury, for instance, the profit that they make. You look at Coca-Cola, the profit that they make. Just think about Nigeria itself. Look, I'm closing my eyes. I could see the plants, Coca-Cola plants. I could close my eyes and I see traders going there and buying and all that. Look at all the different West Africa, East Africa, North Africa, Central Africa. Think about the money they have there. So, look at 21 billion. Okay. So 21 billion, you know, we take loans. Africa take loans from the foreign countries. The loan that we have, and when we're repaying it, we repay each year 21 billion in debts, in loan repayment, you know, because we take irresponsible loans that we take. I'm hearing about the loans that the Nigerian people are taking now from China. The loan that Nigerians are taking from China, they didn't even ask anybody, and there is no plan of how will this loan be repaid. But you see how much we're going to every year. The African countries, different countries in Africa, repay loans that, you know, they pay 21 billion for irresponsible loans that are unplanned loans that nobody actually planned. How are we going to repay this? In what year will we repay it? What are we going to really do with it? So now, 30 billion in overseas aid and 1.3 billion we take from illegal fishing. So trawlers, let's look at trawlers, foreign trawlers that come to our waters and fish there, illegal fishing. It's not like here that people, you can't just go, there are places you can't go to fish anyhow. But big giant trawlers patrol our seas and fish illegally. And nothing is said. And we lose 1.3 billion in that. So have I debunked this fact that Africa is not the impoverished continent that they're talking about? If we receive only 30 billion from donors overseas aid yearly, and we give $192 billion each year, I don't think it sounds like a very poor continent anyway. Okay. So now, the other myths I want to debunk this evening is that Africa, the history of Africa started in the 1500s. That's lie. So Africa has been in existence before the contact with Europeans. And we see that there's been different kinds of maps that we have that have shown the existence of Africa long, long before the coming of the Europeans. And the one that makes me laugh is that when they start talking about Africans, like somebody was saying, Christopher Columbus, you know, all the names, somebody found the River Niger. How could you find River Niger when people were just living by the banks of the river itself? So do you want to tell me that these people didn't know they were living in the banks of the river until you came to tell them, oh, hello, you're living at the bank of this river? Yeah? So it had to take some foreign person to come to your place to tell you, oh, this is where you live. You know? So we've been in existence. Now, I'm showing you the map of, you know, this is a pre-colonial map. So I have this map that I have two types of map here. I have the pre-African kingdoms, pre-colonial time, and the present day Africa. And you could see that both maps, the two maps you have here, look quite different. The past, you know, the pre-colonial map look much, much different to the present day maps. It's been carved, and that's where the problem of Africa starts. Because Africa has been carved and recarved and carved that, you know, most people have lost touch with, you know, there's no affinity. And where people do not have affinity with their neighbors, then there will not, you know, you will not have a peace. And where there's no harmony, people will not use their social capital in any way. And look at Africa pre-colonial times. West Africa imperial, so you find where Ethiopia is in the pre-colonial time is not where you find it now in the present day African map. So also you find what you call the Bantu states. So they're all different places to what you find today, like in modern day Zambia, and South Africa and all that. So the carving of Africa, Africa has been in existence before the Europeans thought about Africa itself. Let's go back now. I always use Nigeria as an example. For instance, there was nothing like Nigeria. There was nothing like Nigeria until 1914, when Lord Frederick Lugard did the amalgamation of the different tribes and people that didn't have anything in common, coming together in 1914, and before and called it Nigeria, and before they could forge any kind of relationship, the First World War broke out. So there wasn't any way for these different people with different cultures, different languages, different ways of thinking and ideologies, before they could even form any kind of attachment and gel together, the war broke out, and then Nigerians, like other Africans, were recruited either as soldiers or as carriers to go out to war, and also to start paying tax in subscription towards the First World War. And so here lies the problem of Africa. Okay? But Africa has been in existence long, long before the Europeans thought about what Africa is. Now, another myth is that Africans are very unorganized people. They have no structure, and they're savages. I remember, I'll give you from example, in 1998, I was in a bus from Togo going to Bamako, Mali, okay? And in that bus, I saw two young white girls on their gap year. And what drew my attention to them is the book that I saw they were reading. They had this book called How to Navigate the Dark Continents of Africa. Wow. So I looked at what they were reading, and I asked the two ladies, one was British, another was Irish. Young, in their 20s, they were gap year, they said to me. And then I said, excuse me, why are you reading this book? What's this book about? They said, oh, they're gap year, and this book is telling them where to go and where not to go. It's the dark, the book title is How to Navigate the Dark Continent of Africa. And I said to them, if Africa is a dark continent, why are you here? Why aren't you afraid to be here? And the idea is that Africans, so it was cautioning them where to go and where not to go in Africa. They will be savage, they will be done this, they will be done that. And yet, as we were traveling that evening, they stopped off in Ouagadougou, in a lonely place in Ouagadougou. But these are the people that are reading a book that says How to Navigate the Dark Continent of Africa. So if Africa was unsafe and they were reading such a book, why get off in a bus in the middle of the night, in a lonely place in Ouagadougou, before we got to Bamako, Mali, Burkina Faso? That's Ouagadougou, and they stopped there. Okay, so I want to debunk that myth that Africans had no structure, no governance, and they were savages. Contrary to that, Africans were well organized before the colonial or the white Europeans came to Africa. How do I say this? We had kings and we had queens who ruled Africa before and since that time, since the pharaoh, before and since the pharaohs. You know the one that makes me so angry, and I must say it before I continue. We talked about pharaoh. I tell you what makes me very, very uncomfortable is that when you're talking about Africa, there's this way of saying that Egypt There's a way they carve Egypt out as if Egypt is not in Africa. I give you an example because anything I say, I give example to the, to the fact. If you go to the British Museum, have you been to have any of you been to? Yeah? You go to the British Museum. What strikes you when you go to the British Museum? What strikes you is that you have the African gallery, okay? And then you have the Egyptian gallery. And I called their attention. I said, why would you have these two galleries? The African gallery and the Egyptian gallery. Are you trying to say that Egypt is not in Africa? Has anybody recently looked at the map of Africa? Where is Egypt in the map of Africa? In the map. Is it situated in Africa or not? Is it situated in the northern part of Africa or not? So why do we have African gallery and Egyptian gallery when you get to the British Museum? Is it not actually trying to confuse people and call young people go there? Most people that have not been to Africa also go to this gallery, and the impression that they receive is that, oh, Egypt is not actually in Africa. Okay, but here we are being told that that kings and queens have ruled Africa right before and during the time of the pharaohs. So the early Egyptian kings, so Egypt is in Africa. The early Egyptian kings, like Tutankhamun and all of them that we talk about, they've been in power, they've ruled right about, 3000 BC before Christ. They've been rulers, well structured. Okay, monarchies developed from social system based on patriarchal system. So we have patriarchal systems. Basically, most African countries are rulers are led through patriarchal system, the male. So leadership goes from the male side of the families, except in Ghana, where you have matriarchal kind of leadership. Now, even where men ruled, but equality also matters. Even where you see that men, we are the kings, we are the rulers, women also held strong and important powers. Let's look at the ancient Benin Kingdom, which is now in the modern day Edo State. The modern day, the ancient Benin Kingdom, which was powerful, every kingdom all over the world knew it because of the kingship, because of the artwork that they were doing, and all sorts of trade. They had the kings, which were the Oba. The Obas were the king, for instance, in the ancient Benin Kingdom, and you need to read the history. Very interesting history, and which shows you how structured Africans are and where. So, the ancient Benin Kingdom, you had the Obas, which are the king, but you also, women were very important. The queen's mother, which is Iyo Oba, and one of them is India. The India is the mother of the king, the king then, and the goal, the head or the emblem of the India you could find at the British Museum. Actually, that was the head of the queen's, of the mother of the king, was the head that we wanted to use for the Festac 1977. Any one of you know Festac? Yeah, which is All African Festival of Arts and Culture. So we wanted to use that, that symbol of the, the Queen's mother, Iye Oba Idia of Benin, yeah? And we wanted, that's the emblem is situated at the British Museum. And we asked the British government actually to loan us this emblem that actually really belongs to belongs to Africans and belongs to Nigeria, and actually, to give it to us on loan, but they refused. We offered some monetary, amount of money to take it so that we can use it to celebrate the all African Festival of Arts and Culture in 1977, but it was refused. So the Nigerians went back and actually carved a new emblem of the idiom, and that one actually is much, much better than what you see today in the British Museum. So that means, in essence, what I'm trying to say is that, yes, Africans, we have been in leadership, we have had monarchs, we've had governance, we've had structures, our monarchy developed from social systems based on patriarchal, but a few of the countries, people like Ghanaians, they look at matriarchals, where women also, leadership comes from that, the mother side. But women also, even we say patriarchal, and in the feminists will talk about how men has been, putting women to disadvantage. In some cases, women have actually wielded a lot of powers. You look at Iya Ashantiwa, you look at Amina, who was Queen Amina, who was a warrior in the northern part of Nigeria, actually leading, men to wars and winning, and so women also play a very important role, when it comes to leadership in Africa. Kings are viewed as fathers, so our kings, we respect our kings. We are not savages. We respect our kings, and we see them as actually demigods, and so we respect them so much. So we are seeing our kings are seen as lions, as leopards, and so these are the symbols. Like when you talk about lion, leopard, elephants, tigers, this shows that these are symbolic of power, strength, energy, and this is the way we see our girls, that big, that huge, that ferocious, that, that energetic, they have power. Lions, anybody that have seen lions, and our kings are believed to have sacred and supernatural powers. And that's why I go back to the ancient kingdom of Benin. That's why in 1867, the British people were warned not to enter Benin, because that's when the king was going to do some sacrifice and do some rituals, because the Oba of Benin was, the speaker of his people. He's kind of the mediator between God and his people. And during the Igu time, he was going to do some sacrifice and commune with God on behalf of his people. And the British were told then not to venture into the city gates of Benin. But they did not respect the instruction, and they went, and that led to the massacre, what you say, the Benin massacre of that era, 1860. That was during actually the reign of Queen Victoria, actually. So our kings are seen as demigods. They are our link to God. Okay. So that debunks the idea that we are unruly people, savages, with no structure, no governance, and no monarchies. Then, what else are we talking? Then let's begin to prove that we had structures, that we have monarchies. Let's look at a sample of some of the kings and leaders that we had in those days. We look at most people that studied African history will remember Mohammed the First, Askia, the Songhai, when we're talking about the Songhai Empire. The Songhai Empire, had an emperor, Mohammed Askia, we call Askia the Great. So he was the emperor of Songhai Empire. So Askia the Great came into power in 1493 when he overthrew the dynasty. They had dynasties in Songhai, and he overthrew the then Sunni dynasty, Sunni Baru, and established his own, the Askia, the lineage of the Askias, the Askia dynasties, and he ruled for several years. But later, during his reign, Songhai was a very, very rich empire. But during the reign of Askia the Great, the empire fell into hard times, and their fortunes began to diminish. And then, because their fortune beginning to diminish, his own children, his own sons, dethroned him, coup d'etat kind of, and took over. And then he went on exile. So that's Songhai the Great, Asika the Great of Songhai Empire. The Mali Empire. So Mali still exists today. Mali, I've gave an instance where some young ladies were going on a gap year, and we're talking from Togo to Mali, Bamako, Mali, and they got off at Ouagadougou. So Mali, that's the same Mali we are talking, that their capital is in Bamako. So Mali has been in existence. And if any one of you have actually looked at the film called The Blood Diamond, some of that, the film, the location of that film was also in Mali, So Mali has always been there, it's been known as, a very, very wealthy empire. That empire was ruled by kings, and the Mali Empire was there from the 1230, CE to 1670 CEs, at the height of its, success and the influence in that region. So Mali Empire was also known as Madingo. And you see this, when you look at the pre-colonial map of Africa, you see the Madingos. The Madingos were very strong, elegant looking people. So Mali was very, very wealthy. They were wealthy in gold. And Mali Empire is located now in modern day Gambia, Ivory Coast, and Senegal, or that areas. So there was also education. You look at Timbuktu, and when you look at the trade routes of Africa, so they were so wealthy. Looking at the trade route of Africa, you cannot talk about the trade routes that people were using to go, to trade in and out of Africa without talking about Timbuktu. So that's one of the kingdoms with structures, with with monarchies and all that. And then we talked about Mali and its wealth in gold and the trade routes. But one of its leaders and the king in those days, or emperors, was Mansa Musa. Anybody that studied West African history would have come across, Mansa Musa, or come across MANSA SUNDIATA KEITA. SUNDIATA KEITA is otherwise known as the Lion King of Mali. He was the imperial, leader of Mali, and he ruled from 1235 to 1255. At his coronation, he was crowned, Mansa, I would just call it Kendiata because the Lion King. He was crowned, after the Battle of Karina in 1235 CE. He was born, and the funny thing is, in those days in Africa, it doesn't matter how we were born. It doesn't matter whether we were born into riches or you were born a poor person, you were born disabled or not. Sundiata, for instance, who became the Lion King, was actually born a cripple. He was a cripple. So he was a cripple, born as a child. So he had all the impediments. Not only was he physically disabled, he had speech impediment. Yeah? He had speech impediment. Think about it. He didn't come up from a very wealthy home, but he grew up with all those physical impediments and speech impediment. He grew up to become a great warrior and become very powerful in hunting. A great warrior. For somebody to be called the Lion King, you know what that means? He was strong. He was powerful. And so, despite all his impediments, despite the physical disability and the speech impediment, he grew up and he had the opportunity. He was given the opportunity. He fought and he took the opportunity and he became a warrior and a powerful hunter. And he ruled. At the height of his, he was at the height of his leadership, he was given the highest honor, that of the master hunter. A master, you can't just be a master hunter if you are not known for your skill and how ferocious you can be, So he was skillful, very skillful. So he produced a kingdom based on so you have the different tribes, and that makes me, let me now deviate a bit. In Africa, I tell you, for instance, when people see Africans, even I will give you an example. In Kent the other day, somebody saw me in a different town in Maidstone, and they said, "Oh, could you kindly tell your brother that they can't come to so and so place because of the Sunday bus services?" And somebody that was with me said, "Do you know this person?" That was in the high street of Maidstone. "Do you know this person?" I said, "No." Then he said, "Why are you sending you a message to send to your brother?" I said, "It's because I'm black, and the other person must be a black person also. So definitely, every black person is your brother or your sister. There's no need to ask you, do you know so and so person, or call the name of the person." So, and that's one of the things, one of the things. So what I'm trying to say is that, yes, we may come from Africa, or we may present black, but Africa is a very complex continent. It's so complex and and so dynamic. So we have tribes. We have tribes. You don't just see somebody from, for instance, somebody from Ghana and think they will know each other. They have their tribes. They have different lineages, different wards, different districts. So SUNDIATA, the Lion King, made, based on his lineage, the Malinka lineage, he made the Malinka lineage one of the strongest lineage that was ruling during his own time. That is clan. So we talk about clans, we talk about lineage, we talk about tribes, and these are all very important. And his lineage ruled until his death in 1255. So let me look at, because I think I will say one more slide, because the next slide, this presentation is in two parts anyway. So I will say the next slide, and then that will be it for today. And we continue tomorrow with the second half of this presentation. It's not something that one can rush anyway. So on that note, another very key ruler, still talking about monarch system and governance and structure, to disapprove the notion that Africans are savages with no structure, no kingship, running around, running riots before they were saved by some Europeans. I'm saying this because this is Black History. I don't do Black History Month, because the history of the world, is Black, So I can't say, you cannot talk about Black history in 1 month. The history of the Black people is the daily history of the whole world. So why can I talk about Black history in 1 month? And I actually hate to call people to order, the Black people that build into Black History Month and talk about it, and we're celebrating Black History Month. We at Diversity House, we celebrate Black history every day. It's the history of our being. It's our experience, our perception, the lived world of Black people, and actually of non-Black people. Because if you believe what the scientist is telling us, that the history of mankind is in Ethiopia, then that means that everybody comes from that Black world. Okay? So now I go back to this last slide before we say good night and start tomorrow for the second half of this series. Mansa Musa, we talked about the Lion King, which is SUNDIATA KEITA. And this, after the death of SUNDIATA KEITA, the Lion King in 1255, Mansa Musa, everybody knows Mansa Musa. Mansa Musa took over from, and started ruling in Mali from 1300 to 1337. He ruled. He was actually, and is still noted as the richest man in history. So when people talk about Africa as impoverished, but the history, in the annals of history, it is written that no person is as wealthy, even living today. No living person is as wealthy as Mansa Musa, who ruled from 1300 to 1337. So he said at the height of his wealth, he was valued at 400 billion pounds. And he was responsible for building the first university. And when I look at people, they say, oh, we are not educated, the savages. But the first university actually was in Africa. So how could you begin to look at these two facts? Okay, Africans are savages, they're not educated. And meanwhile, the first university was built in Africa by this so-called Mansa Musa. And it's in the annals of history if people do not want to whitewash the history. But the problem is that history is being whitewashed. So, and nobody is saying it. University of Timbuktu was a collective of universities. So a collection of different universities and situated in Timbuktu. And so, with this, I would say I've debunked the 5 myths that we started up talking about this evening. That of being impoverished, that of being a dark continent, that of the size of the continent, and that of being savages with no structure, no governance, and no leadership. And until tomorrow, tomorrow we start with the Ethiopian kingdom. And that will lead us actually to some facts in the Bible when we begin to talk about Queen Bathsheba and the rest of them. And so I will say thank you for joining me. And if anybody has any question so far, then we are willing to, or you could chat or say something before we say good night.
Thank you very much for an insightful presentation. It's really helped to have a better understanding of history. Thank you so much, and we look forward to listening to part 2 tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I just hope I didn't rush it. I was just trying to rush. So tomorrow I will speak slowly and I'm not going to rush. But I talk about this because I've been campaigning for the history of Africans to be taught in schools. Because without, when we talk about identity, identity matters a lot. When people lost touch with who they are, then there's no saying that they will behave anyhow because they don't know that they don't have roots, they don't know who they are. So, but if people are taught that they're worth something, that they have, they come from somewhere, that they're not just people that came with the Windrush, because all you hear about Africa is either slave trade or Windrush. But our history goes long, long back before this slave trade business and the Windrush. So, and it's been my passion, saying that if we are in an intercultural society, then also we must, the different history of different people must be taught. And on this note, I will say good night. See you tomorrow for the final service. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to stop sharing. And thank you, Tony, for being there with us, even though we didn't hear from you. We hope you're going to join us tomorrow. Good night. Hmm? Okay.